Good morning, everybody. This is Bella Vasta with Jump Consulting, and I am joined here live today with the wonderful, the honorable, the knowledgeable David Purcell from Business Insurers of the Carolinas. David, thanks for being here with us today.
Well, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me, Bella. Appreciate that. I look
For
forward to it.
For sure. You're definitely the go-to expert when it comes to everything insurance. And online, we're always abuzz about many different insurance topics. The hot topic, as you know, this week is all about car insurance and this thing called non-owned. So basically, David, we've got a couple of questions for you today, but I just kind of wanted to crank out this whole subject area because it's kind of confusing. Let's start off with just a typical example. So I'm a pet sitting business owner, and I have employees driving around doing pet sits. They get in an accident. What happens? Take it away.
Great question. Great question. I think let's define what, usually non-owned auto insurance is a specialty endorsement either to a business owner's policy or a commercial auto policy. And so I think it's important to define exactly what it covers and what it is. And so non-owned auto insurance covers basically any vehicle that's owned by your employees or by other people that's not owned by you, but they're using it in the course of your business. So what that means, if I were to send the receptionist to go pick up the mail at my office, and she drives her own personal vehicle, and she were to get in an accident, and during the course of that accident or that occurrence, they learned that she was on the business use. So she was going to the post office for my particular use. And if that's the case, then if I was sued, the business was sued, then my insurance would be excess over her personal auto policy.
Okay.
It's an excess coverage. And I think that's a very important point that most people understand, that insurance typically follows the vehicle in most states. So if you're driving your car and you hit somebody, your liability insurance is going to be primary. So typically what happens if a pet sitter, the question that you had, if a pet sitter were to be driving in the course of business, performing their duties like they usually do from one pet sitting job to the next, or transporting pets in their car for pet taxi purposes. If they were doing it for your business and they were in an auto accident and hurt somebody or caused property damage, then the person could be sued and their personal auto insurance would apply. However, if the business if they find out that the business was involved and the person was working for you at the time, they could also sue your business. Okay, so, and what's hard for this coverage is that a lot of pet sitters use independent contractors. And when you read the forms, it's just like the liability insurance, they don't define independent contractors under the commercial general liability policy or a hired or non-owned policy. So they're really talking about employees here and not independent contractors. There would be some characteristics or some claims situations where independent contractors may have some coverage. It's all going to be defined by an attorney at the time of the claim, whether there was an employer-employee relationship. If they're true independent contractors, they really need their own insurance.
Right,
so,
right.
That's the tough
So for the sake
question.
of this argument, and I am very heavy on employees, let's have this conversation functioned around employees for the sake of the argument. And I appreciate you making that differentiation because it is very important for people to understand they're two very separate conversations. So for the sake of us, we'll talk employees. So pet sitter going to a pet sit, doing pet taxis for the pets, getting an accident. The sitter would be the one sued, or the sitter would be, and it was their fault. Or the sitter's insurance rather would go after. And then if they had maybe really low limits or something, right? Then the business non-owned insurance would kick in if you had it. If you didn't have it, what could happen?
What could happen is you could be forced to defend yourself in the need of the claim. And if that person can prove that your business, that the pet sitter was working on behalf of your business when they were driving and when the claim was caused or when the occurrence happened, then certainly you would have to defend yourself in that instance. And so you would have to pay for an attorney to defend you. And then if they deemed that you were responsible for that pet sitter being on the road and that led up to that claim, then you could be held liable for those injuries. So
Could
The
you
first,
also be held liable for the the claim from the pet sitter's individual insurance?
no, no. Now,
That
remember,
would that
start
would
back.
pay out no matter what.
Yeah,
And
let's start back over. The personal auto will always be primary. So
uh-huh.
if you are driving, say you're working for me, you're my employee, you get in an accident, whatever limits you have on your personal auto policy would be primary.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say you have a $100,000 auto limit for bodily injury and property damage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your policy is going to pay to the defense is usually outside of the limit. So meaning they're going to defend you first. And if they find that you are negligent and you did cause the accident, your policy will pay up to $100,000. If,
Okay.
if with no non-owned coverage, someone could try to sue the employer. They first have to prove that you were working for me, and if you were, then you could be found negligent because the business owner, myself, could be found negligent if for you working for me, which led up to that accident. Does that make
So now
sense?
how much does that non-owned go up to? I mean, because I'm sure there's a cap on that, right?
Yes.
Or are there different options and things?
Sometimes there are different options. Typically, what you see is about $1 million.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I was going to get to in my notes. There's two ways to purchase non-owned auto coverage. One, you can buy it through a commercial auto policy, which is recommended. If you have a business and you put decals, stickers on there, and you say pet taxi, and you're driving around and you're using it in your business, and that's your primary form of living, and you're earning a living, you really should have a commercial auto policy as opposed to a personal auto policy, because a personal auto policy is designed for you personally. It's not really designed to pick up. They will pick up business use. So like if you're driving, say I drive to my office and then I go see a client, if I have it in my personal auto policy, it will cover that. But it's really not designed to cover a business because you can't add a hired and non-owned liability to your personal insurance. So you can only buy commercial insurance under a commercial auto policy, which you can then purchase optional endorsements such as the hired and non-owned liability coverage. Commercial auto coverage is, say you had just one vehicle. Again, if you have stickers, let's say you're an LLC and you have stickers on your car and you say, Pet Sitter LLC, we aim to please, blah, blah, blah on the side of your car. You're driving your vehicle and you get in an accident, that you will be sued personally and as a business. Now, if you don't have a commercial auto policy, that personal auto policy is not meant to cover your business because you don't have that covered under that policy. It's just under your personal.
Let me back you up.
Yep.
Are you saying that if a pet sitter has a decal or magnet, they automatically have just changed their personal car to a commercial auto car, therefore have exposed themselves to that additional liability?
Even if they don't have the sticker on their car, if they're using it in their business, it's not going to negate coverage under the personal auto policy, but you really should have a commercial auto policy if you're driving your car routinely for business because you're using it for the business. It's no longer a personal auto. It's now a commercial auto.
Can I also make the jump to say that what I'm hearing is it's probably best well suited for pet sitters, if they have sitters driving around out there, to have a non-owned car insurance coverage?
They should, and we're talking employees. So
right.
Let's make that distinction. If
you can only get that if you have a corporate or a commercial insurance policy.
No, that's where I started with. There's two options. The way
I got confused there. Sorry. Okay.
The first one is via a commercial auto policy. The other way to purchase this coverage is through a business owner's policy that offers. If you've ever seen a business owner policy, it covers property, it covers liability, and then it gives you a whole lot of other coverages and a whole lot of other options.
Like an umbrella, right? Is that what that's considered? Like an umbrella policy?
No, and let's set the record straight for that. An umbrella policy is a policy that goes over your commercial auto policy, your general liability, and your workers' comp employer's liability. So that's what an umbrella is, excess coverage. So let's say you had a commercial auto policy with $1 million limit, you have a general liability with $1 million limit, and then you have employer's liability with $1 million limit. If you bought an umbrella, that's another $1 million that goes on top of those three. So you would then have $2 million for all of those things we just mentioned.
Okay.
So an umbrella policy is completely separate. I don't want anybody to be confused because I've seen that online as well. I see lots of
Right.
things that people put out there that, aren't factual, and we want to set the record straight. That's why we're here, is to
Well, and
educate.
that's the thing. I think the two most common things that kind of do get passed around there, this information that it kind of seems like it is inaccurate, is one, an umbrella policy. If you have like an umbrella policy for $1 million, it'll cover anything that happens under your business at all. The other thing that we hear is, oh, I'm covered for pet taxi. It'll cover if something happens to the pets. Well, yeah, the pet in the car, right? But not the car, the people, the other people, all that other stuff. I think those are the two major things that get talked about that I hear on Chatter.
Yeah, I agree, and I do believe that there is some, some misinformation going on with the umbrellas, and the umbrellas are broader than the underlying policies.
Right.
So there's two different terms. There's one's excess liability policy, which would follow the form, and anybody that's bought an insurance policy knows that there's a bunch of forms behind it. It's key to read the forms, or talk to your insurance agent, whether it's me or anyone that you're working with, how the forms respond. Okay, so if I write a general liability policy and a commercial auto policy, I have forms in those policies. If I buy an umbrella, the umbrella is typically a little bit broader, and it may pick up some things underneath, such as if you were to rent a boat to take out your clients on. You aren't going to go buy a boat policy, but the umbrella may pick that up if it's under 26 feet. It's
Right.
all specific to the form. But the umbrella is really essentially over and above the commercial auto, over and above the general liability, and the employer's liability. So,
And it sounds like something that you don't use or do on a frequent basis, like drive around in your car. It's something like above and beyond your typical way of doing business.
It is really, it's for those large claims that, the ones that nobody wants to have. So
yeah.
you get in a commercial auto accident and you hit somebody, and let's say 3 people in that car are now hospitalized, and they have, $2 or $3 million worth of injuries. Your commercial auto policy will typically only pay up to $1 million. So now if you had an umbrella, you would have an extra $1 million.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So now you'd have $2 million to pay those injuries.
So
Same thing with general liability. If you say a dog bit somebody while you're walking down the street, and it's a really bad claim or accident, the first $1 million would be paid under the general liability policy. Then if you had an umbrella, the coverage would go into the umbrella.
Right.
So it's an excess policy.
So let me ask you this, because we're talking about umbrellas and we're talking about doing things. My good buddy Kate out in Ireland, she's Possum Media. We have this great podcast going. It's twice a month on the first and third Thursday. And our next one is going to be all about gaining your confidence to have events. So as you're talking about umbrella policies, if I were to have an event like a yappy hours, for say, you brought, I'm sorry, this is a little off topic, but you said umbrella. If there were like 2 dogs that got in a fight at one of my events, or I don't know, something happened, would that fall into the umbrella? Because that's not where does that go?
Probably not. See, and that's the key with insurance, and that's where this umbrella term gets tossed around way too often.
Yeah.
And really not meant to pick up all. What you're talking about would be a special event, and you can buy a liability policy for it's called a special events policy that would cover special events. Let's say you wanted to host a bring your dog to work day, or you wanted to host a event like a training seminar, okay, in your local area, and you invited the general public, and you have 200 people show up, or it's a costume day, and everybody brings their pets in costume. All of those things would be special events policies. Your general liability is specific to covering what you do on a daily basis, which is maybe pet sitting or dog training. Those are what the general liability is for. They're not intended to cover special events where those exposures are outside of what you were buying that liability policy for.
Right.
So you have to look at what you're actually trying to cover, and then talk it over with the agent that's working with you. But special event policies are normal. We do sell them, and we have people that have festivals, people who have bring your pets to their farm. So
you would have to get a special endorsement for every event.
Well, that actually would be a separate policy for a special event such as that. An endorsement. And then again, endorsements, we're getting a little bit complicated and a little bit off topic, but endorsements are really covering those are options that you can add to a policy. So
Okay.
endorsements are like changes or forms that you add, coverage forms that you add to your policy. You really can't add a special events form to your policy.
Uh-huh.
What you can do is add an additional insured to your policy, which would be like one person or one entity. So that would be an endorsement. So
Okay.
endorsements are typically changes to your policy that come with a form behind it that spell out the terms of what they're going to cover.
Okay.
Okay. And for a commercial auto policy, getting back on subject, the non-owned autos is a coverage option that you would have to tell your agent or ask for, which would then be added to your policy if you had a business owner's policy. So then it would pick up that exposure for your non-owned vehicles, meaning your employees' vehicles, while they're working on your behalf.
Okay. This is
Okay.
all very confusing, David.
I know it is, and it's a hard topic.
We've got two different people with two different questions for you. The first one that came in was from Jan Brown, and she said she'd like to know if she wants non-owned through BIC, but your company,
Yep.
why I have to change my personal auto insurance to BIC. I sure don't have to do this with another company who I currently have my non-owned auto through. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have, yeah, I do, and I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that we, at our office, we offer association liability policies, but we also offer business owners policies. You know, you don't have to purchase you don't have to switch your personal auto insurance to come with us to get the hired and non-owned. We can offer a business owner's policy just like the other agency that was mentioned, and we do. It really boils down to what you're looking for in your business to cover. Under a business owner's policy, here we're going to go a little bit off subject, so bear with me. But on a business owner's policy, they have coverage forms. And then under our liability policies that we put together for the associations that we work with, they have their own set of forms. Forms are what dictate coverage. And under the association form, it is broader in terms of taking care of the pets, taking care of property in your care, custody, and control than the BOP policy. So there's a decision to be made at that point. Which are you looking to cover? Do you have that many people driving for you? And if you do, the first step is to try to maintain, and I get a lot of pushback from sitters across the US on this, try to maintain, require a limit in your contracts if you do have independent contractors. Or your employees, you can ask for them to make sure they maintain a certain limit under their personal auto policy. So one, because that's going to be the primary limit that's going to pay if they're in an accident. Okay. And then the second thing is to get the commercial auto policy. If you have especially if you have a pet taxi, you certainly need a commercial auto policy, and add the hired and non-owned coverage. Now, if you have the business owner's policy, we can certainly offer that as well. But note that the business owner's policy has a couple of problems, and that's why we introduced ours before the business owner's policies ever even came about. And we were writing liability for pet sitters back in the early 90s. And our forms take away the exclusion for pets and property in your care, custody, and control. If you read the business owner's policy forms, they do not have the same endorsement on their policies. What they do is they give you animal Bailey coverage under a property form. They also limit you to the vet medical covered under that form, typically either to $1,000. Some may go up to $5,000, but let's just say you had a accident and you're driving, you have two pets in the car, and you get in an auto accident. Maybe you get hit and both the pets get injured. Well, the pets would only be covered up to $1,000 for their vet medical injuries because you may not have been at fault. Somebody else may have. And so same thing as with your general liability insurance. If you're taking care of the pet and the dog ingests something while it's in your care, or the dog jumps off the back porch, tears its ACL, all of those are vet medical claims. We pay those vet medical claims up to the limit you choose under your policy, which I've seen the vet medical this year especially go much higher than $10,000 on several claims where the dog has surgeries, they have repeated physical therapy appointments. And so we've seen vet medical, we paid as high as $25,000 for that.
Wow.
Other policies like the business owner's policy would not pay that. They would pay $1,000 or $5,000 at the very most. And I believe CNA is the only company that offers $5,000 for the vet medical injuries, regardless of fault. So
it sounds like there's a lot of different questions that a business owner has to ask themselves to decipher when talking to at least business insurers about should I get the association policy or should I get the business owner's policy? Those are the two products that you kind of have able to offer a pet sitter, right? Let's start there. So you get these two products. One is if you're a member of this association, a predetermined kind of package thing. And then you get this business owner policy where you're standing alone by yourself. You own this policy. You're not part of this big group, right? Is that part right?
That is correct, because
okay.
the association policies are tied to the association. So you have to have membership with these associations.
Right. And you technically save money, but these are two different products offering two different things. And it's important, it sounds like, for a business owner to ask themselves, okay, how important is this pet taxi? You know, David, between you and I and everyone listening, this pet taxi thing kind of always is laughable to me, because I don't know many pet sitters that make a living off of pet taxi. It's kind of one of those caveat, oh, we do pet taxi, like talking points, but no one really ever does it. I know in my own personal business, it's less than 1% a year. So why even offer it? So we kind of don't advertise it. You know, we barely even do it. I probably count on one hand. So I think that's maybe a question someone needs to ask, because when you're talking about liability coverage in an accident, you've got it for the pet, you've got it for the person driving, you got it for the other people involved. And it was once explained to me that it's very easy to get really, high dollars in accidents, because you could have one person in a car, you could have 4 people in a car, and every single person is going to have their own claim, their own bills, their own deductibles. So and then something else I heard you say that was really important is either requiring a certain amount of coverage for individual people. So I think this is a really good topic, because you can't really do a one size fits all in this conversation right now. You can say, here are all the different options and things to consider, but you definitely can't just say, okay, I got insurance for my business, I'm covered, because you have no idea what it means. We have another question from Katie, if I can. I'm just going to read it here. I was told that I should also have professional liability insurance to cover things my general through business insurers does not cover. Non-owned auto is included in the professional liability quote from another company. I guess it's the same thing. Why do we have to get commercial auto through BIC when we can purchase this policy separate through others? So it sounds like, if I can just interject and then I'll give the floor to you, it sounds like what I'm hearing is that, insurance isn't a one size fits all. Every company offers different products. So you could get, just like you could get pet sitting from XYZ company and your pet will be cared for, but you can have all these other companies that also offer pet sitting, but you have different experiences and you get different services through pet sitting. Is that a good comparison?
Yes and no. Let me just take a step back and let's look at this.
Break it down for us.
Again, you're right in the respect that you can buy different policies that will cover a pet sitter for liability. You can buy different, but the primary differences are what kind of claims that you want paid. Under a business owner's policy, you will get some things like the hired and non-owned. If you ask for it, it's an option. So you can have that. The professional liability, again, that's where you're comparing apples against oranges, because our association policy, you have to read the actual coverage form. And this is what I always have been trying to educate people on from day one in competing against the business owners policies, because I see the claims that happen, and I have seen the claims that happen for the last 21 years. And I know where the biggest payouts are. And I've also, had people who called me after they've had claims that have not been covered under the business owner's policy. And one of the key things to look at is independent contractors. If you truly have independent contractors, a business owner's policy is probably not for you. Whereas under the association policy, under our form, we have it endorsed that we automatically pick up independent contractors. So regardless of whether you have employees or independent contractors, the association policy is going to be a better fit. You're not going to have to worry when you have a claim, oh, well, did I have an employee or did I have, that's when the attorney's going to get involved and say, was there an
employee try to force that they were actually, your independent contractor forced that they were actually an employee so that you cover it.
Exactly. And we've had sitters across this country who have called me after being with the other agencies that write pet sitting pup coverage under a business owner's policy. and had their claims denied. And they had an independent contractor that was taking care of a dog, and the dog gets injured, and they turn it into the business owner's policy company, and they say, well, you're an independent contractor, that's not covered under our policy.
Right.
So you have to be real careful there, and really look at the coverage forms. The other thing that our policy does, that question asked about professional liability. So let's address that. Under a business owner's policy, most of them will give you animal bailee on the property form, and some of them will give you a professional liability that's called pet groomer's professional liability. It does, if you read the form, it'll pick up professional liability for boarding kennels and grooming, and some will actually mention pet sitting. What that is another way to try to pick up the care, custody, and control exposure. However, your profession is taking care of pets, and what that's mean to let's say you were negligent in leaving a puppy crate open.
Right. The
dog gets out and chews up the house. That could be considered a professional liability exposure. However, look at all the exposures that exist, and where we pay a good 50% of our claims are to incidental injuries to the pets themselves, that there are no negligence. There's no professional liability negligence, meaning a dog were to ingest something on a walk. Let's say it eats a rock or eats a stick, now needs surgery, or is playing ball outside and swallows the ball. You didn't cause that. Your professionalism didn't cause that dog to do that.
Negligent, yeah.
You want that claim paid. And that's what it boils down to. The forms are different between the association policy and the business owner's liability forms that they offer. So there's two different sets of coverages there, and it's key to read the form and know what applies before the claim happens. Because once the claim happens, you're going to be calling. Can't tell you how many calls we've actually had where people have other policies and they call us and they say, well, they only paid $1,000 and it was a $7,000 claim. Now I have to eat $6,000, so I'm switching all my insurance to you.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I'm sorry, I've been trying to educate the world about this and get that word out.
Yeah.
And then I've also had the calls on the non-owned. People have called and said, well, my brother-in-law, was doing something for me, and he got in an accident. Do I have any coverage under the association policy? And I have to say, no, you need non-owned auto coverage. And there's only two ways to get that: commercial auto or via the business owner's policy.
Right.
So we have some clients that actually buy the association policy and the business owner's policy.
Right.
We have some clients that buy the association policy and the commercial policy.
Yeah. Yeah, we just had a gal in our group, and she said, all right, well, I'm going to just buy both policies because I want to make sure I'm covered. So what I'm really hearing is that it's complicated and it's unique to your business. And I think that a lot of business decisions, David, comes down to how much risk are you willing to take? And if you could answer those questions, you're going to figure out how much insurance you need, how you want to run your company, if you want to have ICs or employees. And I think it's worthy of a conversation. Now, David, I know the answer to this question already, but for all of our listeners, because we could talk about this forever, and I kind of want to try to wrap it up a little bit. I hope I've ignited some questions and thinking in our listeners' minds. If they want to get a hold of you and they don't have a BIC policy, will you still talk to them?
Absolutely. And again, I don't want to call it just a BIC policy, because what we are, we're an independent insurance agent, and we represent probably 100 different insurance companies. So just about anywhere else you go, we have all the markets.
Yeah.
Not just the association offering. We offer the business owners policies through many national carriers that you would know about.
Yeah.
That I'll just remain nameless at this point. But I know all the places you can get pet sitting insurance, and the only ones we can't offer would be State Farm, Allstate, or a direct writer like Geico. If I don't think Geico offers a pet sitting policy, but there are direct writers out there. But then you go to the national carriers like the Travelers, the Hartford, all of those companies we can represent. And we have, if they write pet sitting, we can offer those policies, and we can offer the BOP, and we can offer commercial auto, and all of those different products.
Yeah.
But I want people to understand that the business owners policies are good for the right fit. So if you have employees, you may want to consider employment practices liability insurance. If you have a computer and you need and you're accepting money online, or you're keeping a database with your client's information, you may need cyber liability. Just because you buy the business owner's policy doesn't mean you're going to get that. You have to ask for it. You have to talk about the agent about what your exposures are, and then we uncover what's the best fit for you and your business.
And that so you have cyber liability, and like I know my credit card processing system, they have an insurance tacked on to cover me for fraud and credit card fraud. So it's like there's so much stuff. So Katie just said, yes, exactly, Katie. Katie just said, how do we know which liability policy, business owner or association we already have through business insurers? And then she said, I think I just need to call him. And I agree. I want to encourage everyone listening today to call up your insurance agent. David is a broker. He represents, he's kind of like your go-to guy. He has knowledge and can represent many different companies. And if you just sit down and have an honest conversation with him and say, hey, this is what I'm worried about. Hey, what if this scenario? David's a real approachable guy. He's awesome. His whole team is, because David, I'm sure you can't talk to everyone, but I really encourage anyone listening just to call up, have a conversation, know exactly what you're covered for. If God forbid something were to happen today, do you know exactly what would happen and what would be covered? If the answer to that is no, I really encourage you to arm yourself with knowledge. Don't be paralyzed in fear. Don't be calling up David crying after something happens with a huge bill to pay or all kinds of confusion. We had another question here come in, but I think you actually answered it at the beginning. He was talking about if an accountant wants business to buy a car, entitle it personally, but pay through the business. But if the driver was working at the time as an accountant going client to client and gets in an accident with a personal auto insurance, pick it up. That was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the question, and
Okay.
the answer to that would be yes. If you're driving, again, the insurance is going to follow the vehicle. So
Right.
if the personal accountant's insurance would be primary. Now, if they sued the accountant firm, the CPA firm, they would then be over an excess over that primary personal auto policy.
Yeah.
So if they have the non-owned liability coverage, they would have coverage.
So for sake of this conversation, David, to answer the do I need non-owned car insurance coverage in my small business, my answer, and I'm curious to see what you would say, I would say unless all of your sitters are driving around with $1 million car insurance policies personally, which I don't even know if they exist, if you are not a risk taker, yes, you need it. Or you need to at least have a conversation.
Agreed. And I think you do. I think if you have employees that are driving on behalf of the business, you need to have non-owned auto liability coverage.
How much is this stuff? Are we talking hundreds or thousands or?
Well, it's a good question. Certain businesses, non-owned auto is a really low exposure, meaning like for myself, an insurance agent or a commercial or a CPA who sends out somebody to the post office or goes to see their client infrequently. Okay, so if I send somebody to the post office, I don't have much exposure. Now, if I was a pizza delivery guy and I had 10 people working with me, they're all employees that were delivering pizzas going as fast as they could to get them out, that's a much heavier exposure. Same thing with pet sitting. If you've got 10 or 15 employees working for you and they're on the street all the time, then you certainly have an exposure, a much larger exposure.
Right.
Insurance companies know this, and you got to be careful because the insurance companies are cracking down. And that's the other thing with the business owner's policies, that the rates continue to go up year after year with the business owner's policy. So you got to be real careful there because they throw in all these coverages. But we've seen two companies that have kind of gone to the wayside, Hartford being one of them, that will no longer insure pet sitters.
Yeah.
And that's because they really aren't insuring them like they should, because they're basing it on property rates. And that's how a business owner's policy is built. Right. So it's built on property rates. Most pet sitters don't even have any property. They may have $5,000 worth of computers or other than that, they don't really have a property exposure. So the business owner's policy is really not designed for a pet sitter. And, ultimately the losses will exceed what they pay in as premium. And ultimately, these companies will keep going down one after the other, and unless they make some changes to their model. Now, there is another insurer that's similar to us in our association business. It's out of Wisconsin, and they also do it. They do it by head count. So the number of people that work for you, that's how they base their exposure, which is a much better way to cover it. We do it by gross sales, because if you're doing it by property, and it has nothing to do with what your true exposure is, which is a service where you're making money off a service, you're not charging the right amount of liability, the amount of money that's going to cost to cover those claims. And so you could ask, Hartford and some of these other companies that are no longer offering it, why they're no longer offering it, and they'll tell you because our claims were monstrous. They were just
Right.
much
Yeah, I heard that.
higher than expected.
So let me ask you two more questions, if that's okay. I've got and I just want to get them out before I forget them, and I'm trying to write them down. So say it's a two-part question. One, so a sitter has a parked car in front of someone's house, right? They're doing a pet sit. A neighbor comes out, backs into their car, right? They maybe don't make a lot, or for whatever reason have very low coverage. They have to pay $1,000 deductible on their own car to get their damage fixed. Something like that, would a non-owned then kicked in? So like me as a business owner could be like, hey, okay, I'm so sorry that happened. Wow, you have that limit, those low limits. Like, hey, I have this insurance. Maybe we could submit a claim here. Is that what would happen? Or,
No,
I mean, do you tell your sitters that you have it and like you use it as like, hey, this is another reason why it's great to be an employee? Or like, do you kind of like hold it back in your cards and you don't really tell them what your coverage is, and you use it in case it's like that, oh crap moment, where someone actually is coming after you? Like, does that make sense? Like,
yeah, yes. And let's go back to the scenario you gave me. Somebody backs in and hits your car while it's parked in front. That's really not what the non-owned is covered. Non-owned is a liability coverage. So it would only protect you for your employees that are driving on your behalf, vehicles that you don't own, and you hit somebody or injure somebody. That's a liability coverage, is the bodily injury or property damage to a third party. If someone hits you, backs into your car, their liability will be responsible. If they don't have coverage, there's another auto coverage that's called uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist coverage.
Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying.
So again, it gets really complex, and it's hard to put it all in a 30-minute blab. But
I know
that's why it's best to talk to the person you're working with. Again, whether it's me or any agent, that specializes in the field that you do. If you're an accountant, if you're a pet sitter, whatever the case may be. Talk to someone who understands and is reading the forms and really does have a handle on what they're doing as far as the coverage and how it's going to apply. And, that's what it boils down to. And you also mentioned one other thing that I want to point out is that you said that we had a great team over here. We really do. We have an incredible team of professionals here. I have people who have been here for 15 years that have worked with me and have known the product. So if I'm never here, I know I'm going to be out next week, and I anticipate there might be a lot of calls. We have people in my office that are ready to answer your questions and assist you and make sure that you get covered the way you want to be covered, and answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I love that. So final question, I promise. Is this an insurance that I shout from the rooftops, hey guys, I have this, you're covered? Or do I hold it back and only lay that card on the table if I'm sued? Or, know what I mean?
That would be one that I would probably hold back. You don't need to go out and tell everybody, okay, you're covered for this. I mean, it's just like the more you're trying to protect yourself and your business. The employees, if they, if it's a different coverage like workers' comp, that's kind of a benefit to them. But as far as the non-owned coverage, if you have the coverage, it's great if you do, but I don't know that you need to go telling everybody here, hey, I have non-owned coverage, you're covered, because you never know until the claim happens. It's up to that adjuster. And I want to be forthright right here and now, is that anytime you have a claim, the adjuster is going to get to the bottom of it. They're going to bring in their defense team, try to defend you. You're not liable. And so you never want to admit that you're liable. You never want to say, oh, I've got insurance that covers it. That's not something you want to do with time of a claim. What you want to do is say, here's my insurance card. I'm going to turn it in. You turn it into your insurance, and we'll let them talk it over. And you don't want to ever admit liability until you got all the facts. There may have been a witness down the street that saw something that happened. It may, another dog came out of another direction that caused the dog that you were walking, or the dog that was riding in your car, to jump out the window. You don't know that, but the best thing to do is get witness testimony if you have a claim, take some pictures of the damages, submit it to your agent, talk to your agent, but never, admit liability at time of a claim, because it's going to be up to the insurance companies to uncover the truth.
Okay, perfect. Katie has the last question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
It's so interesting. She says, will our PSI association still give us a discount on these additional policies with you?
As far as the PSI is concerned, and all of our associations, we only have discounts on the liability and the bonding. We can't control the national carriers, what they do. We designed these policies for the associations because when they came to us in the 90s, they were looking for, there wasn't really not a good market out there that would even cover the exposure. And so that's when we went to a carrier and we were able to get the endorsement onto the care, custody, and control and include coverage for the pets and property in your care. And to do that, we had to write a monoline liability policy. That was the only way to get it covered. And what we've done is enhanced that form and broadened it with other endorsements so that it's the broadest liability form out there for a pet sitter, or dog trainer, or any pet services professionals. We have the broadest forms when it comes to the liability, including the pets in your care. So we can't, unfortunately, offer any discounts to, say, a Hartford or a Travelers policy because they don't give discounts for the association.
Got it. So it really sounds like you've those two products I was talking about, like you've got this business owner product that is kind of very generic in general. And then you've got this other product that it was created through the association that is a little bit more poignanted to the pet sitters themselves. So gosh, guys, just please call your insurance agent, figure out what you've got, figure out what's important to you, have those conversations, ask those questions. It is definitely your responsibility as a business owner. David, how could everyone get a hold of you for everyone listening today?
Sure. The best way is to call our 1-800 number is 1-800-962-4611. And my extension is 214. But if I'm not here, I am going to be out next week. But if you can always call and leave me a message. But if that same 1-800 number, you can dial 0 and get any member of our team. We have 5 other people besides me that work exclusively in our pet department that are all licensed and knowledgeable insurance agents that can all assist you with these coverages and products. You can also email me at dp@business-insurers.com. And I will be checking emails even while I'm out, and we'll get those moved to someone who can respond more quickly.
Yeah, you are awesome on response. Like I get responses from you where I'm not even expecting it. And that's really important. Customer service is a lost art, and you can really knock the socks off people. David, thank you so much for being here with us. This is another episode of Bella in Your Business. We will have David back many times. You guys just keep chatting online and telling us what you want to hear about, and we will make it happen. David is so open and willing to help our industry and help make it better. So thanks for listening. Join us online at facebook.com/Jump Consulting. You go to jumpconsulting.net to get more of all of my products, and y'all have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bella.